Thank you so much, Dolf De Roos, for being here with me today. I so appreciate it. I am so excited.
You're so
I
welcome. It's my pleasure.
Oh my God, it's so awesome. I can't believe that we're actually here. I told everybody a little bit about how I met you, my journey on even getting the Tam Talks up and going, what my goal was for everyone. And I promised them that we would drill down. We're not going to do a lot of fluff. We're going to get to it today because Dolph's the man to do it, the king of real estate. And what I've been asking everyone, Dolph, I want to ask you first. We want to go over, your background, how important mindset is, the opportunities recessions bring. We're going to talk about obviously commercial real estate and all that. Before I even get that, what I'm trying to do, people at your level, tell me how you started. Tell me your background. I mean, I knew you were born in New Zealand, but can you tell everyone how you got started?
Sure. I mean, it depends how much detail you want to go into. I came from a family that believed that to succeed in life, you have to study hard and get a degree. So when I finished high school, without thinking, off I went to university, didn't even know what I wanted to study. I didn't like the sight of blood, so medicine was sort of out, and I didn't want to peer into people's mouths all day, so dentistry's out. I quite like law, but then you're restricted to practicing in the country in which you get your degree. So I sort of went through this process of elimination and ended up doing engineering. And during my very first week at university, I looked around at me at the people with the degrees, the professors, the tutors, the lecturers, and it occurred to me that despite what I'd been indoctrinated by my parents, they weren't particularly well off. They drove tiny cars to small homes and they had shabby clothes. And I thought, there's something wrong with this formula that degrees equates wealth.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what did your parents do for a living? Just by
curiosity.
Oh,
about things. They never had the chance to go to university. When we lived in Australia, they ran a convenience store,
Okay. I'm wondering.
Like so I decided to make a study of the rich, thinking perhaps somewhat naively that if I could find 30 or 40 things that the rich had in common, and if I could emulate some of those, then I'd have a good shot at being rich, right? Good theory. But the challenge was I could hardly find anything that they had in common. It wasn't age, it wasn't gender, it wasn't religion, whether you're an immigrant or not, firstborn in the family, lastborn, anywhere in between. I could only find two things they had in common. And one of them was that almost without exception, the rich either made their money or held their wealth in real estate. And I thought, well, if that's all it is, I can do that. So at the tender age of 17, I set about looking for a property. I found what I thought was a great deal. I went to a bank.
At 17 years old, where were you when you were like, where was this happening?
In New Zealand.
Oh, in New Zealand. Okay.
I went to the bank and gave my spiel as to why I think the bank should fund it. And he patiently waited for me until I stopped talking. And then he leaned forward and he said, "Are you done?" And I thought, that's an odd question. But I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "This is a hoax, isn't it?" And he thought it was a university prank, whereas I'd been, dead serious about it. But fortunately, I didn't say this isn't for me. Obviously, I'm going to be no good at this and give up, which is what most people do, by the way. They get a small setback in anything they're doing and they just give up. So I went to bank after bank after bank until eventually one said, "You know what, I'll take a chance on you." And I would have much preferred to have heard, "Oh my God, that's such a great deal. Even I'd want to buy that. Of course we'll fund it." But I was happy with, "I'll take a chance on you." And so
you brought the deal to the bank, and so you were shopping the deal that you had found with the different banks. Is that what did I get that right?
No, because I wasn't shopping around to get the best deal. I just needed anyone to say, "Yes, we'll fund it." Remember, everyone was turning me down.
Oh, what I meant was you had already found the real estate, so you were just trying to fund it. It wasn't like you were just trying to get a loan first. You had the property in mind first. Okay.
Yeah, but you can't get a loan first. I mean, some people get pre-approved, but that's that's a pretty silly way of doing things. You need to find a great deal and then get yourself enthused about why it's a great deal. And if you're not enthused by it, it's the wrong deal. And if you don't get enthused by any real estate deal, don't do it. Do something else. Make hamburgers or invest in the stock market or crypto or whatever. Because no, it's true. If you don't get passionate about something, then you're in the wrong game. Find something that you are passionate about, because if you're passionate about it, it's not even work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, maybe get passionate about passive income, get passionate about building wealth, because I know that you're going to agree that in the circles that you run in, and I've been in loans for 25 years, and what I studied was the people in real estate had the most wealth. They had the most money. So would you agree that 90% of millionaires are made through real estate?
No, I think that used to be the case, but nowadays, to be honest, if you do a study, people make it through companies that they start and all kinds of things. But if they don't invest it in real estate, they tend to lose it again. whereas those that put it in real estate and leave it there. So I think you'll find a high proportion of wealthy people have real estate. I'm not sure if it's fair to say that 90% of them made their money through real estate. The idea is to have something that generates cash flow and then park that cash flow permanently in real estate. And that gives you the passive income. So anyway, I had this property, and at the end of the first month, I collected the rent, and it was more money than that month's allocation of mortgage and insurance and property taxes and you name it. So I was making money, and I wasn't working for it. I wasn't swapping time for money. Right. Before that, I'd worked in a car wash at $1.72 an hour. It's a light while ago, but it still wasn't very much back then. And here I was making money, and I thought, I've got to do this again. So I did it again and again and again. And 4 years later, I had an honors bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. And the university came to me and they said, hey, it's only one more year for a master's. Why don't you do it? And I didn't have a reason. I said, because I didn't have a reason. So I did it. And then halfway through that, they said, you're doing so well. Why don't you switch to doing a PhD? And again, I didn't have a reason. And the lesson here is you've got to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Otherwise, you end up leading other people's lives. This is true. I always say there are three kinds of student: part-time, full-time, and eternal. I was the eternal kind. I mean, give me a break. 8 years at university. Yeah, it's a long time. It's a long time. Remember, my parents said degrees equate to wealth. So when I finished with a piece of paper in my hand called PhD, which most people don't know what it stands for, even those with a PhD don't really know what it stands for, but they were pretty proud. And I think they were waiting by the telephone for me to call them and announce the acceptance of a job. And I did go to 2 job interviews. And at the end of the second one, I was offered a job at $32,000 a year, which back then was a lot of money. But unfortunately for them, the week before, I just did a real estate deal that netted me $35,000. And I remember thinking, why would anyone in his or her right mind work for 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for $32,000 when in 1 week you can make 35 and take the rest of the year off, or do it again, or read books on the beach, or whatever. So I never took that job, and to this day, I've never had a job. I mean, my resume is pretty blank, That's amazing. That's amazing. And did you have any mentors? I mean, along the way, because everyone I've talked to, including myself, how I got into loans, walked into a building and the man offered me a job to, taught me how to do loans. Who were your mentors? Did you have any mentors? Well, they were hard to come by. New Zealand's a tiny country. At the time, there were barely 3 million people there. And I was on the South Island, and 3/4 of that 3 million lived on the North Island. So I did find people later on that pointed me in directions, but I read a lot of books. And ironically, one of the books I read was by Robert Allen. And as you're aware, later on, we became kind of friends. We used to tour Asia together, doing events for all kinds of organizations. And even to this day, we're still working together. So it's interesting how that all evolves. But at the time, no, I just read books and I decided I'll give it a go. Any books that you can recommend to our audience that you think might give them that little springboard, that maybe it was an aha moment for you, other than your books, Mr. Dolf De Roos? Anything that inspired you? Yeah, I mean, I've written 23 books. On the one hand, I thought it was 19. Forgive me. Silly people. Not to recommend my own, but I don't think there's such a thing as a bad book on real estate. I think there are good books and there are great books, and you want to avoid the good books if you can spend the time instead reading great books. But it's not real estate that makes brilliant people and great authors and all that. It's just that real estate is so easy to replicate. And it's so easy to teach. I spent 8 years at university getting a PhD in electrical engineering, and everything I learned has been made redundant by new technology. Whereas what Robert Allen wrote 40 years ago is still valid. A mortgage is still a mortgage, collateral is still collateral, and equity is still equity. And if you don't know the difference, shame on you, and you should learn it. But it takes 5 minutes to learn, and it sticks with you forever. There's no reason why people can't learn the ropes on real estate. And most people own real estate. They own their own home. I mean, in this country, I think it's 63% or something, which is a pretty good statistic. But you're not really going to become much better off if you own your own home, for the simple reason that, let's say it goes up in value from whatever it's worth today to 30 million in 2 generations' time. You might think that's a lot, but in 2 generations' time, 30 million is going to be a pathetic small drop in the bucket. And if you sell that home for 30 million, what you'll be able to buy with that 30 million is the same as what you can buy today with the value of your home. In other words, you need a second investment property to really be better off. And that's why I encourage people to invest. Right. We're going to get to that. And I want you to drill down and tell us what you look for and all that.
And I think, the name of this summit is Become Recession-Proof. And what the comment, I've been asking everybody that I've been interviewing thus far, and I think you would agree, and I want you to expand on this. Recessions bring certain opportunities. Would you agree with that? Unique opportunities?
Yeah, the thing with a recession is everyone is talking doom and gloom. And it's not the facts of the recession. I don't even believe there's going to be a recession, but it's not the facts that represent the doom and gloom. It's people's perception of the facts.
Well, so the thing is that right before the interview that I had before with Thomas June, who's a CEO of Accelerate Capital, we went over that this isn't a repeat of 2008. There's a lot more equity. There's been stops in place with the lending, realm, as far as guidelines and whatnot. So I don't think it's going to be like that. But you don't see that this particular economic downturn in any way, shape, or form is going to create certain opportunities that are unique, or no?
Well, of course it will. For what I was saying, that the perception is it's going to be really bad. I already see articles where real estate's going to crash and it's going to be the end of the world. And if you had money in real estate, you're doomed to a slow and untimely death. I'm exaggerating a bit. Because they're all, predicting things are going to be bad. And I've got buddies in the stock market and they send me articles where real estate's going to come down 20%. And I say, yeah, and your point is, well, shouldn't you sell everything? And I say, for heaven's sake, in the last 3 years, it's gone up 45%. So even if the prediction of a 20% reduction is accurate, we're still 25% ahead of where we were 3 years ago. And the challenge with selling is, firstly, you pay a commission to sell, you pay depreciation recapture tax, you pay the dreaded capital gains tax that you don't have to, you never sell. And then you've got to buy back. That's the assumption. You buy back when it hits the bottom, but no one knows when it's going to hit the bottom. So I had properties in Phoenix during the 2008 GFC, the global financial crisis, that went down 60%. Some went down even more. And, should I have sold then? Well, I avoided all the hassle of selling and the paperwork and the depreciation recapture tax and you name it. And I didn't have to pick the bottom. And now prices have not only come up to, where they were before, they've gone way above that. So the idea is just to buy real estate and sit on it. The exit strategy used to be death, but I realize that's pretty short-term thinking. And you've got to think in terms of bequeathing your property. And the exit strategy is you just hang on to it. Because I've got articles that I can show you which said that the era of housing as an investment has come to an end. And it was by a reputable publication, namely Time magazine. But it was from 1947.
So they've been saying this
Science Digest and Business Week in 1969 saying the era of owning a property as an investment vehicle is long gone. And houses are no longer affordable for the majority of Americans. And from the 1960s, well, I bet you anyone who bought a house then and hung on to it will be glad they did. And anyone who sold thinking, oh, it's the oil crisis or the, whatever crisis is the flavor of the day, they all have a reason for selling, but they regret it. I always say people who sell tend to live long enough to regret it.
And what you just said is kind of to my point. You have people calling you going, you better sell everything, right? It's out of fear, right? So there are going to be some people that listen to those, they're listening to all the noise and they start getting fearful that they're going to lose, right? And they start selling.
Well, that's great. I'll buy them.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. There's going to be things, people, and that's what I want the audience to understand, is that right now, the people that aren't arming themselves with knowledge, because knowledge is power, they're going to get scared and you're going to be able to pick some stuff up. That's why we talked to Rob Gill in the morning yesterday, talking about what we can do to prepare ourselves to be able to, to take advantage of those opportunities, right? Putting your money where it needs to be to take advantage. And you're called the king of real estate. Would you expand on that? Why commercial? Why is commercial so exciting to you? And what do you look for?
Well, I think, do you mean I'm called the king of commercial real estate or just real estate? Because
the king of commercial real estate. Why commercial? Because that's obviously, is that your favorite commercial? You're called the king of commercial real estate.
I thought you were going to say why king, and I said because I'm the wrong gender to be called the queen, But why commercial? Oh my gosh, I've written a book on that. There are so many advantages of commercial. I'll make the bold statement that once people understand how good commercial is, they won't want to waste a minute of their lives looking at residential unless it's a house that they're going to live in. Because if you're going to live in a house, you might as well have some say in what it's going to look like. But commercial has so many advantages.
I know, but I think that the misconception is that people think that you need a lot of money to invest in commercial real estate. But you wrote a book, I think, or I've heard you say commercial real estate with no money down. So do you need a lot of money to invest in commercial real estate to start?
Well, just to manage expectations of anyone, it's much easier to buy a $20 million portfolio if you've got 20 million in the bank. So yes, it
Right.
makes it easier. But not only do you not necessarily need money to buy either residential or commercial. I mean, Robert Allen's whole premise 40 years ago, his original book was called Nothing Down, meaning no down payment. Right. You can do it in residential. I make the bold claim, and I'll back it up though, that it's easier to buy real estate without having any money that's commercial. I've made most of my money in commercial real estate by not having any money and still managing to buy buildings. And it's something that you can't do with residential. And the reason is simply that the value of a residential property is based on comps. So if you've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, certain age, condition, size on a particular street, the value of that house isn't determined by the tenants or whether you've got tenants or not, or by you, the seller, or by the agent. It's determined by the market. If a similar size house, age, condition, number of bedrooms and bathroom sold up the road or around the corner or down the street for $350,000, then your almost identical home is going to sell for about $350,000.
That's
you
correct.
Can't put it on the market at $550 and hope to sell it. It's just, it won't work. And that value of that house is independent of whether it's tenanted or not. You might say it's a bit easier to sell if it's vacant, because if the buyer wants to live in it, they don't have to wait for the tenancy agreement to expire. But when it comes to commercial real estate, the value of a commercial property is literally a multiple of its rental income. Technically, for those interested, it's the rental income divided by the cap rate, where cap rate is short for capitalization rate. And it literally means, most people don't understand that. They think it's return. It's selling at a cap rate of 5%. Nonsense. Well, it's not selling at a cap rate, but it's selling at a return of 5%. In a market where the cap rates are X. Now, if cap rates are 5%, that means to arrive at the value of the property, you capitalize the rental. So if cap rates are 10% and the rent is 100,000, then the value of that building is $1 million, because you divide the 100,000 by 10% and you arrive at the $1 million. The capitalized value of that rental is $1 million. Investors are willing to pay a multiple of 10 times the income to buy that income generating asset. And when you understand that, you suddenly realize that, hey, okay, so if we can figure out a way of doubling the rental income to say 200,000, the cap rate doesn't change. So then the value of the building is going to be $2 million. So you might say, well, that's easily said, but how do you double the value of a building? Well,
you're going to tell us, right?
Vacant building and you put a tenant in there, or you've got a thrift shop paying $12 a foot, and I got a coffee shop and paying $25 a foot. That's slightly more than doubling it. So let's use those numbers. 100,000, it's half tenanted. Cap rates are 10%, the value is $1 million, it's on the market for $1 million. We fill the other space, the vacant space, with another 100,000. The value is now $2 million. We go to the bank with a $2 million appraisal evaluation, and the bank says, yes, but it's commercial. We'll only lend you 50%. And I say, okay, so that's $1 million, right? He said, yep. And well, that's all I need for the purchase. It's no money down.
Okay, so that's how
most people don't get this. And then you might be saying, well, $1 million, that's a lot of money. Well, it is. But then go to Indonesia, where it's 14,500 rupiah to the dollar, and everyone's a billionaire there. You know, don't be fazed by the number of zeros. But the smallest commercial property I bought was all of 59,000, and there are many houses worth a lot more than $1 million. So you know, just keep it all in. It's a numbers. It's a game.
Now, rates have gone up, right? Interest rates have gone up. Does that deter you from purchasing? I mean, you've been in this a long time, and so you've seen rates go all over the place. People right now, when I'm talking, I'm trying to get them to understand and open up their minds, so they're thinking more macro and long term than micro. And how do you feel about the interest rates? You as an investor, does that deter you? What kind of stops do you do, or what's your mindset on that?
I thought you were going to say, how do I feel about open minds? Because having an open mind is good, but the problem is that many people think they have an open mind when it's merely vacant. In other words, they don't think. So you've got to think. And listen, you know, we all try and control the world. And if only this was this way, and if only interest rates stayed low. Some of these people that you're blissfully trying to talk into investing, they weren't buying when interest rates were 2.25%. So it wasn't the fact that interest rates weren't high that prevented them from buying. They had some other mental block. So the thing is just, if you buy in 10 years' time, you'll regret it. Not that you bought, but you didn't buy two. And everything gets adjusted. So, if interest rates go up, it becomes less affordable. So fewer people are buying properties. That means more people are renting properties. That means rents are high. And so everything you've got, and I don't know how much of your audience is based in the US and how many of them are based elsewhere. But here's the difference. Here in the US, we can fix our mortgage rate for the duration of a 30-year loan. We can even fix it for a 40-year loan. That's astounding. In other words, when interest rates were low, 2.25%, if you had bought a property with that kind of an interest rate 3 years ago, and you did fix it for 30 years, which I think you'll know better than I do the stats, but over 85% of mortgages are fixed. And that means you're sitting pretty and you won't care that interest rates go up. Whereas everywhere else in the world, you can only fix a rate usually for 2 years. Occasionally, it's a bit longer. But they say that in Australia, by March of next year, 45% of all existing mortgages will have their interest rate adjusted to market. And that's going to mean some people who've got investment properties who are cash flow positive right now, they're going to be cash flow negative. That's a big problem. That's another good reason to be investing in the US. So those of your audience that are in the US, you can sit pretty, but do something with it. Don't just say, oh, well, now I've got another excuse not to invest because there's a massive recession coming and everyone is going to lose their jobs and we're going to go bankrupt. No, it's not going to be that bad. I don't think it's going to be as bad as 2008. Could I be wrong? Yes. I've been wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong. What are the biggest excuses you hear from people as to why they don't want to buy real estate?
I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm the wrong gender, I've had the wrong training, I've got the wrong background, my family's always held me back, I've spent money on too many cars, I should stop that habit, but I can't kick the habit. I'll do it when my kids finish school, I'll do it when I get married, I'll do it when I get engaged, I'll do it when I get a girlfriend or boyfriend, I'll do it when I get rid of my girlfriend. I mean, every excuse under the sun. And the thing is, stop the chatter in your head and decide, do you want to do this? Don't do it because I'm saying so or you're saying so. They've got to have their own reason. But if you think that it's a good thing to do, stop all the nonsense and get down and do it. We have different talents, we have different heights, we have different colors, eyes, we have different backgrounds, different kinds of parents, different adversity to debt. We have but the one thing we've all got in the same quantity and proportion is time. We get 24 hours a day, and even if you fly to Europe and you lose 8 hours, or do you gain them? You lose them. You gain them when you come back. So, and just use it differently. And I always say to people, if you want to get ahead in life, and not many like me saying this, but get rid of your TV. Don't just turn it off. Toss it out the window. I always say, if you want to save some money, first open the window. I don't care, but get rid of it. Because people spend hours in front of the TV.
I don't watch TV, but yeah, you're right.
Into some scriptwriter's fantasy and who did what to whom, who killed JR and Game of Thrones. I've even watched 1 minute of Game of Thrones. Have I missed out social? Yes. Are there conversations I could have participated in that now I couldn't participate in because I didn't even know what happened in Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones? Yes. Do I care? No. Because they might be world experts on a TV soap, but they haven't invested yet. And that's why they've still got a job. And I'm still working, but I've never had a job because I couldn't imagine, what am I going to do? Stop working and watch TV? No, I'd rather go out there and do things,
Absolutely.
So it's an attitude. It really is an attitude.
It is an attitude and it's a mindset. And you and I didn't touch on that, but I mean, I think that you're living proof of this, how important is mindset. I've asked everybody that question. How do you keep your mind? You're always extremely positive. I mean, how important is mindset to what you do? And how do you keep the positivity?
Everything.
It's everything.
It's everything. It determines what we do. People think that they'll be happy when certain conditions are met, if they're making enough money, if they have enough assets, if they meet the right person, if they travel to the right places, or whatever. And if you have that attitude, if you're waiting for the outside world to make you happy, then you'll always find a reason not to be happy. I mean, we can drill down a bit more and say, some people say they'll be happy if this happens, and if that happens, and if that happens, and this, and this, and this, and this. And even if 19 of the 20 or 99 of the 100 are true, they'll find one reason not to be happy. So the first thing is you've got to change it to, I'll be happy if this happens, or if that happens, or if that happens, or because then you only need one of the 100 for you to be happy. Right. And secondly, it's a decision. When you wake up, you can decide it's going to be an awful day and I'm going to complain a lot because I get a kick out of complaining and I get attention that I don't otherwise get. People don't notice me unless I complain. Or you can say, I'm so blessed to be alive.
Right.
You could have died during the night.
This is true. Gratitude. Gratitude is a really big thing. I think there's so
Attitude of
much power in
gratitude.
attitude and gratitude, power in our words. My kids, when I'd be taking them to school, they get up in the mornings and, I'm telling them what to do. And I'd say, you know what? You're in charge of today. You feel like you don't have any control, but what you're in control of is your attitude, how you respond to things. So you are in control. And I think that when we wake up, everything's a decision. And you can decide whether or not you're going to have a good day. You can decide whether or not you're going to have a bad day. That's what we are in control of, is ourselves. We can't control outside forces. So mindset, and that's what I'm learning. Rob shared some stuff. Rob Gill, who I know that earlier today, about how when he had that aha moment and his mindset changed, everything changed for him. And I think that I know from experience in talking to you just in the last couple of weeks that you believe in that too. Now, I want to pivot a little bit. I saw one of your videos, and can you tell people again, because I want to make sure that they know where to get a hold of you. What is the name of your, I just subscribed, and I don't have it in front of me, but how do we find you on YouTube? Is it just Dolf De Roos?
Yeah. So I've got a name that's not common. First name is Dolf. It's so simple. It's 4 letters, but everyone gets it wrong at Starbucks when I started taking photos of all the variations. For some reason, and outside of Europe, the word Dolf seems so weird that they just can't get it right. So it's Dolf. Just Google Dolf, but my last name is De Roos, D-E-R-O-O-S, and that's my YouTube name, and it's the variations of that are on TikTok and Instagram and everything. So it's pretty easy to find. Okay, good. And then we'll make sure that we drop that in the chat. But I also wanted to talk about, I saw a video that you had done, and I didn't go through all of it, but it said free money from the government and why the government wants you to buy real estate. And you're saying there's different ways that the government will help you. You did a whole video on that. Can you touch on that? Well, there are many ways that they help you. To give one example, we have taxation in this country, in every country. And taxation, most people think it's the government's way of generating revenue to pay for the services they provide. So they have border control and passport inspections and police forces and all that. So we pay tax. And that's not an incorrect analysis. However, there's more to it than that. Taxation is also used to shape social policy. So to give an example, there's extraordinarily high taxation on cigarettes and alcohol on the basis that people consuming those things actually cost the country a lot of money, hundreds of billions. And so let's have the people who indulge in cigarette smoking to bear some of the cost of doing that. So they'll charge extra tax to discourage behavior, but they'll charge a lower tax to encourage behavior. So if you have a business and you buy a computer for that business, you can depreciate the computer. Like, I think current rates are about 40% a year. So if the computer costs you $10,000, in the first year, you can depreciate 40% of it, or $4,000. So you reduce your taxable income by $4,000, and you pay tax on $4,000 less than you otherwise would have paid on. And it's reasonable because computers do go down in value. So do cars. You can depreciate them, and other office equipment, and you name it. So why do they allow you to do this? Well, it's to keep us competitive. Otherwise, we'd still have abacuses while our competitors using the latest supercomputers. But there's another thing where they give you a tax break, and that is in real estate. For instance, you can depreciate real estate. You buy $1 million property, you can claim some of that and lower your income there. Now, if it were like computers, you think, well, it must be because real estate goes down. So do you think the government's so stupid as to think real estate goes down in value? No, they read the reports as well. They know it's gone up by 45% in the last 3 years, and you can still depreciate it. And the building can be depreciated at roughly 2.8% a year. But the plumbing and the wiring, if you do what's called cost segregation, you can do it on any house and any commercial building. And I always tell people, they don't listen, but I say, whenever you buy a property, always, not sometimes, but always do the cost segregation, because the tax benefits you'll get from it will be far greater than what it costs you to do the cost segregation analysis in the first place. So wiring and plumbing can be depreciated at 7.5%, and non-load bearing walls have a percentage. And then crockery and cutlery, it's like 60%. And some things you can write off. And you can do not only this, what's called accelerated depreciation, but up till last year, I might have flowed over, you could do 7 years worth of accelerated depreciation in that year. So I had clients, some of whom you know, who bought a property and they put $1 million in their pocket because they could get all this. So it's government money that's being given to you. Now, why does the government allow you to depreciate an asset on the basis that it's going down when in actual fact it's going up? Well, the government realizes that it's not very good at providing accommodation for the needy. So they need people like you and I and your listeners to do it. So they give us these tremendous tax incentives. And that's just one of them. You know, we can do a whole weekend event on how to get money from the government to buy real estate.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Do you want to, what are the top benefits of real estate that you can just kind of name off? What would be the top benefits other than building? I mean, and give some of your examples, because when I went to go see you talk, you had gave us some examples about how you looked at certain things. I think you ended up there, you opened a vineyard. I mean, give us a couple of examples of how you created wealth in your portfolio and in your career. They're interesting stories.
I get the feeling you want a 2-minute answer on, you know, what are the benefits? The benefits are so far and wide. So, you know, I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got a lump of money. It doesn't matter how much it is. Could be $10, it could be 10 billion, but let's talk about $100,000. Okay. And let's say you want to invest it in real estate as opposed to paper products, stocks, bonds, futures, options, certificates of deposits, treasury bills, CDs, you know. I guess a CD is a certificate of deposit, but I said it right. It doesn't matter. So let's talk about paper products. Here's one of the fundamental differences. If you want to put money into these products, you need 100,000 cash. I know some people say, well, you can buy stocks on margin, but it's a small proportion of stocks and it's only for some investors. And if the value of the stock goes down, they have what's called a margin call. For most people, to own $100,000 of stock or other paper products, they need 100,000 cash. Whereas if you have that same 100,000 cash and you want to buy real estate, clearly you could buy a $100,000 property. But as you know from the mortgage industry, you could buy a $200,000 property with a 50% mortgage, or a $300,000 property with a 66% mortgage, or a $500,000 property with an 80% mortgage. And by the way, in this country, you can get an 80% mortgage without needing PMI. Private mortgage insurance.
Yes.
But you can also get $1 million property with 100,000 cash and a 90% mortgage. Even if you don't get the 90% from one bank, you can get a first mortgage for 80% from one bank and a second mortgage from another bank or financial institution for the remainder. So you've got leverage, which means if everything goes up by 10%, your stocks have gone from 100,000 to 110. You've made 10,000 or 10%, but your property would have gone from 1 million to 1.1 million. You've made 100,000 or 100%. It's leverage. So that's the first massive advantage. Number two, when you buy that $100,000 stock portfolio, what's it worth the day you buy it? And it seems like a silly question because by definition, it's worth 100,000 because there's a stock market and everyone, whether you're in Houston or Peru or Bhutan or Barcelona, you pay the same price. Whereas when it comes to real estate, when you bought that property for $1 million using 100,000 cash, what was it worth? It might have been worth $1 million, but maybe it was only worth 800,000. You paid too much for it. That's why you have to be wide awake in this game. But it's also possible that it's worth $1.5 million and someone let it go for $1 million. And if you don't believe that, you need to look at more property because it happens every day of the week that people are selling because of divorce, or they're too stingy to engage the services of an agent, or they think they know what it's worth. You name it, it happens all the time. So you can buy more value than you're paying for. And then the third thing, but you did ask for reasons why it's better. You bought your stock portfolio for 100,000. It's worth 100,000. What can you personally do to increase its value? And the answer is many things, right? You can hope, you can pray, you can write letters of encouragement to the directors of these companies, wishing them a great day in the hope that that puts them in a good mood because they don't wake up naturally happy. And then being in a good mood because of your letter of encouragement, they're going to perform well and make your stock go up.
Yes.
There's nothing you can do, for heaven's sake. Whereas when you bought that property worth $1.5 million for $1 million using 100,000 cash and a 900,000 mortgage, what can you personally do to increase the value of that property? Oh my God, there's 101 things you can do. You can paint the darn thing. And if you haven't ever painted a house for $5,000 and increased the value by 20,000, then you've got to change the way you spend your weekends. You can put a flower garden in front. You can add a carport, and you know there's a listen. I've written a book literally called 101 Ways to Massively Increase the Value of Your Real Estate Without Spending Much Money. It's the longest title on Amazon. So you're limited only by your imagination.
Say that one more time. Which book? So we can put it into the chat. What's it called? The one that's been the longest in Amazon?
101 ways to massively increase the value of your real estate without spending much money. I'll have to repeat it a few times for you to jot it all down in one go. But here's the point. Let's say everything's doubled. Your stocks have gone from 100 to 200,000. What must you do to get some of the benefit of that increase in value? And the answer is sell. So we buy stocks to have it grow, but when it grows, we have to sell. It seems counterproductive. When that property is doubled from 1 million to 2 million, right? No, wrong. It was a purchase price of 1 million, but it was already worth 1.5. So when it doubles, it goes from 1.5 to 3. When that property goes to 3 million, what must we do to get some of the benefit? We could sell, but we don't have to. In fact, I'd go against selling because, as I said a moment ago, you have to pay commission, depreciation, recapture tax, capital gains tax. Instead of selling, we go to people like your previous employment system of mortgage funding, and we refinance. We get a new mortgage. If we get a new 90% mortgage, that's 2.7 million. We pay off the 900,000 for the last mortgage. We've got 1.8 million. Ask yourself the following question. Is that 1.8 million income? Nope. So there's no income tax on it. Is it the sale of something? Nope. No capital gains tax, no sales tax, nothing. It's tax-free money for you to do with as you see fit. And some of the smart people listening will say, yeah, but hang on a minute. You've now got a, what did I say, $2.7 million mortgage that you have to pay interest on. That's true. But we've also got a $3 million property generating rental income, which covers the mortgage.
Right.
And so it's going to go up in value again.
And that's what, and I'm still doing loans. I've been doing it for 25 years. I mean, why would I ever stop doing that? I just love helping people. But I've been telling people, you know, there's a lot of, right now, I think the national average is like in the houses right now, and this is residential, is the equity is about 58%. So I'm telling people, and this is what I'm hearing from other people than yourself. Listen, you guys, there's good debt and there's bad debt. So you can qualify, and now there are stated income programs. And there's actually, we didn't have that before. A lot of self-employed people, because of the depreciation that Dolph's talking about, they're writing off depreciation, they're writing everything off, which looks great on taxes. But then when you go to the lender and you're trying to get a loan, you can't get a loan because you can't qualify. Now there are products out there that are just off the debt service alone. So there's a lot more. It's opened up the market a little bit. And there are products and programs that can help you capitalize on what's going to be happening in this economic downturn. And the only reason why, it's like Dolph said, it's not going to be a bloodshed like it was before, buy and hold, but other people are going to start selling. And when that starts happening, that's what you want to do to capitalize. So if somebody has that equity in their home, would you agree, regardless of the rates, as long as the numbers all work out, you go maybe do a short-term fix right now. You pull that cash out, you put it into one of your, savings vehicles, right? And then when the right opportunity comes, and I think you said that a good opportunity comes once a week or so, or however many deals that you look at, you can expand on that. So then you can leverage.
It's my signature statement.
I'm so sorry, Ron. What is it?
No, I'm just saying, that's why I reiterated. The deal of the decade comes along about once a week.
That's right. See, the deal of the decade comes about once a week, people. So you got to position yourselves and get ready. So if you do a short-term fix, you grab that money, you've got it out, and Dolph here to tell us you need to leverage when you do the numbers. And the rents are higher. So that's, like you said, the rents are higher. That's helping people qualify with the debt service. And that's also a benefit to you when you're going to go be buying these properties. It's sad for the people that are paying these higher rents, but the homeless, the homeless problem is increasing. A lot of our people that are watching are in California, Dolph. So, I mean, $1 million here, that's just like that, what is our, I don't even know.
That's a shed in the backyard.
Yeah, exactly. That's a shed in the backyard. So that's not scary numbers for, our market. But I think you'd agree that right now is the time to leverage so you can create that generational wealth and passive income. Do you agree?
Well, in general, I mean, people have to be able to sleep at night, and some don't sleep.
Well, they would have to qualify. So it's not like you're going in above, your head. But yeah, obviously. My other question to you is this. Wait, I don't know, this excuses. Wait, real estate, white commercial. I'm so sorry. Now, tell me about some of your deals, because when you were up on the stage and I saw you at the event in Utah, you had told us about a couple of deals that you had personally done. And then I want to go into the story about, I know that I saw a video that you had said that Robert Kiyosaki had come and he asked you to show you some of your real estate that you owned, and you had driven around and shown him some of the real estate that you own, and his comment about it afterwards. But tell us about a couple of deals that you've done that have done really well for you. Commercial.
I think all of them have done very well for me, not because I was brilliant in choosing them, but you buy real estate, you're leveraged, and you sit on them for long enough. Eventually, they'll get a 45% rise in 3 years for no.
But there's got to be something you look for when you're looking at something. There's got to be some
Yeah,
sort
so
of
you
a
look for an
benchmark.
anomaly. You look for some twist where you can add value. So, in New Zealand, we had a lot of sheep. At one stage, there were 72 million sheep, of which 3 million thought they were human, right? We had 3 million people, 72 million sheep. So sheep farming was big, but then the bottom dropped out of the market. And about a third of sheep farmers went bankrupt. And lots of people saying doom and gloom and recession, and it's the end of the world as we know it, and everyone's going to die in New Zealand from starvation and all that. And other people looked around at the opportunities, and these sheep farms were being sold for pennies on the dollar, and no one knew what to do with them because, all they'd been doing for generations was creating sheep manure. So I bought them and I planted a crop, and it took 5 years to get my first harvest, but the harvest was grapes, and I turned them into vineyards, and everyone wanted to be able to say, oh, I own my own vineyard, In fact, do you want to see my private label here? I can get you a bottle if you like. I know the owner. So the value of these sheep farms went up by a factor of 10 by changing the use. And this is something I'll often say when it comes to commercial. I said it before, changing a thrift shop to a coffee shop. It's a change of use. And suddenly the value changes. You can't do that with a house because the only thing you can change it from and to is from a residential property to, another residential property. Now, you might turn it into an assisted living facility, for instance. It's still residential, though, different numbers and dynamics and obligations and all that. But it's basically all residential, whereas with commercial, there are so many things you can do to change the value and the use. Another example is I had 168 acres of land out past Buckeye. It's about an hour out of Phoenix, in the middle of the desert. It was barren. What would you do with it? And I dug 2 big holes, like 24 acres of hole, and filled it with water and turned it into a water ski lake development. So I lost 24 acres of the 168, but the land that was left went up in value by more than what I lost by having 24 acres of land less. That's a big lake, by the way. You're just limited by your imagination, and you can't do that with the stock market or with futures. You can't use your own creativity, your own brain power to change the value. And that's what I love.
There was a building that when I saw you present, that you had put up there that you had purchased, and it wasn't very, very pretty. It wasn't a very pretty building. I think it might've been a liquor store or something like that. And, you had bought it for I think you said like 60 grand or something like that. And you were getting rents off of it. I mean, what I think and then that story I want you to talk about with Robert Kiyosaki, and you were driving around with him. You're showing him all, the different, commercial properties that you own.
Because your audience hasn't got the benefit of seeing the videos or the photos. But here's the thing, many people will look at buildings they've got, and it's exactly what Kiyosaki said. Well, they're ugly.
That's what I was getting at. Yes.
Here's the point. I don't know what people are looking for if they want it to be pretty. I don't care how pretty it is on the outside. Does it generate income? And do you have certainty of having a tenant there for the next 30 or 40 years? All right. So as I always say, the real beauty of a building is not in the exterior, but in the balance sheet. And most of my buildings, I would say that they're probably not particularly aesthetically pleasing, but I don't buy artwork when I buy real estate. I buy something that generates passive income. The name of the game is passive income.
Right.
So I'd rather have an ugly building that creates passive income than a beautiful building that's vacant.
Exactly.
That's a real problem.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to make that point, so that when people understand, this is all about the numbers, people. So when you're buying, he's looking beyond the beauty on the outside. And then he did put a picture on the screen that I was able to see, and it was not a very pretty building, but he said, but the numbers were beautiful. The numbers were beautiful. So look for beautiful numbers, not necessarily beautiful buildings.
It's the way to go.
That is the way to go. Okay. So, let me see. So you don't worry about that. I think you definitely agree that, commercial real estate, you're thinking more of a long-term mindset. These aren't like buildings you're just going to buy and burn and flip and whatnot. You normally hold on to your stuff for a duration.
Yeah, any real estate. I'm not a flipper. I'm not a speculator. I'm not a developer. I think all those things are fraught with challenges. Are there developers who make more money than I do as an investor? Yes, of course. There are people who make more money with crypto than I do in real estate. But I think if you took 1,000 people that invested in crypto on average and compared,
I mean, crypto right now is literally like they were calling it kryptonite. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with that, but yeah.
Right. Right.
With FTX exchanges, I think that's in the front of the people's brains. So I think that people are more looking towards hard assets. They're talking about gold, silver, and real estate, those type of.
Right, but I have challenges with gold and silver too, because for me, one of the requirements for anything to be called an investment is that it has to generate income. And when you buy gold, there's no income from it. You're buying it in the hope that it's going to go up in value so that you can sell it to someone who's also going to buy it thinking it's going to go up. You can sell it to someone else for more. So it's pure speculation. You're buying it in the hope that it will go up in value. And in a sense, crypto is like that too. Again, I know a lot of people have made a lot of money in it, but you're hoping that it's going to go up in value. And that's what everyone who tried to talk me into was saying. It'd be $1 million by Christmas. This is last year. So it's not an investment. An investment has to generate income. Stocks do, but as I've said, there are reasons why I prefer real estate to stock, because I can have more control. I can do things to the property to increase its value.
But there's not something in particular that you look for. You just, I mean, when you're looking at a deal, there's like three things, there's just like three things that are kind of the top of your list. If they don't have those, you don't look any further. You don't go deeper.
No, if it was a list of three things, everyone could learn those three things in 20 seconds flat, and all the good deals would be gone. It's not that simple. You've got to see where you can add value. And this is where, if you're well-read, if you read a lot of books, and if you travel, you'll have more fun and success at this game than if you sit at home doing nothing. Because, I've traveled a lot, like a lot, and there have been ideas in other places that I bring back to implement here, or ideas from the US that I take over there. And it gives you a tremendous insight, because it's remarkable how, despite, half a century of color TV around the world, probably a bit more now, 70 years in some countries, you'd think the world would be completely homogenized, but it's not. The world's completely different. Look at when Japan goes to watch one of the World Cup soccer games, and at the end of it, they go around and clean up the stadium. No other nation does that. Most other nations throw their empty cans, well, they don't have beer cans, but cans of soda pop and whatever, the wrappers of lollies and sweets and candy. And the Japanese, it's a cultural thing. So culturally, we're all different. And it's blissful. Otherwise, there'd be no point in traveling, because it'll be all the same except for the weather. So
No, I'm saying you've spoken in how many different countries? I think I read 26 different countries.
I've taught in 26, yeah.
In 26. How many different countries do you own real estate in?
Oh, that I'm not sure. That's a sensitive topic for all kinds of reasons. But remember, there are all different ways of, if you have bought into or you're a partner in a company that invests overseas, can you say that you're in that country? And if you're a 50% owner, probably yes, but what about a 2% owner? And on it goes. So there are all these gradations of,
I have a question, because, being in the lending space, people from other countries come here, and I'd be able to do loans for them, as a international buyer.
You have been able to?
Yes.
Okay,
well,
cool.
with certain qualifications. Okay. Is that not the case for Americans? Are there countries, or they can go and look in other countries that they're not a citizen of and purchase there? Do you have any top, is that even possible? Or do you have any top, if that is possible, do you have any top countries that you think is good to look at or be looking at?
Yeah, each country has benefits and disadvantages. I mentioned the fact that our interest rates can be fixed here for 30 years, because I imagine, well, you said most of your listeners are in California, let alone just the US. But other countries have other advantages. We've mentioned New Zealand a couple of times. I happen to have been born there. There is no capital gains tax on the statutes here. It doesn't exist. Now they've got other tests. It's called the Bright Line test, where if you own it for a certain short time, they'll catch you some other way. But in general, there's no capital gains tax there. It's very politically stable. They've had good, average, consistent, long-term growth rates with a very small standard deviation around that growth rate. So it's a pretty good country to invest in. Other countries have other things going on. Australia, they've got what's called stamp duty up to 5.5%, penalty for buying a piece of property where you pay this penalty for the government. And the only reason why the government charges it is because they can. No one's protested enough to get rid of it. In fact, interestingly, I did an event, and this is an interesting insight for Americans too. I did an event in Melbourne, which is in Australia, and I pointed out that across the Tasman Sea in New Zealand, there was no capital gains tax. And this woman stood up with her hands on her hips. She said, "And why not?" And I said, "Lady, I don't want to use you as an example, but I hate to point it out, you're kind of part of the problem. Because when you hear that your nearest neighbor doesn't have a tax that you have, you stand there and say, why not? As if, well, if we have it, they should have it. Instead of flipping it around and saying, well, if they get around and away with not having it, then why do we have it? Because you will not get your government to rescind that onerous tax until you have that attitude of, well, then why do we have it?"
Right.
So they do have that. But on the other hand, Queensland, a state, one of the 7 states of Australia, has about double the growth rate of the rest of Australia. And the southeastern pocket of Queensland, where you've got the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast and all that, it has about double the growth rate of Queensland. So they have about 4 times the growth rate of Australia as well. It's so easy to beat the average in real estate in a way that you can never beat the average in any other investor. How do you beat the average by investing in gold or in crypto or whatever? I don't think there's a theory that stands the test of time. Whereas I talk publicly, I've got 18 ways of beating the average in real estate. They all work independently, but you can combine them. It's so logical. It defies logic that more people don't do it, especially when, you've got parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, whatever, who retire. And you ask them, what's your biggest asset? Or they'll volunteer. It's not the stamp collection. They started that. An uncle once said, "Mark my words, sonny boy, one day this is going to be worth a lot of." No, it's not that. It's not the classic car they bought in the 1970s, thinking if they do it, one day it's going to be worth. It's their house. The house they lived in. The very thing that's gone up in value the most is the thing that avoided them having to pay rent for 40 years. And you hear them say, if only we'd bought a second one. Remember, honey, when that neighbor's house was on the market, it was ridiculously cheap, and we complained about the grass being high and the paint job being horrid. Instead of complaining that no one bought it, we should have bought it ourselves.
Should have leveraged.
Through leverage. And you can avoid all of that just by getting in the game.
Just getting in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, beating that mindset and thinking macro and all those good things that we touched on. So thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm going to do a rapid fire because everybody that's at your level, I like to ask their routines. I like to ask, I want to take a little peek behind the curtain. So, Mr. Dolf, are you ready? What time do you wake up in the morning, kind sir?
I never set an alarm. It's an odd thing. If I've got an early flight, I'll wake up just before then I do set an alarm, but I never have it go off because I wake up just beforehand. But I just got back from Europe, like in the last 48 hours or something, and I don't set an alarm. Unfortunately, coming back, of course, I wake up at 4 a.m. at the moment, but when I got to Europe, I'd wake up at 9. That's one of the beauties of not having a job. You don't need an alarm.
Right. Well, you're a little different also. Well, you're the European kind of a lot different. You're different than most people I've talked to. Yeah. So I just like to see the differences and I like to embrace them. And you're just one of the most interesting people I've met. And I think in my lifetime, possibly. So do you have a morning routine though? See, Dolf, unlike the other people we've talked to that are kind of sitting in an office, you're all over the place. You're traveling, you're moving, you're in different countries. I'm actually going to talk to people about your Lake Como experience later so they can look that up, that you do it once a year. That's awesome. But Dolph's a little bit different, so I know this is going to vary. But do you have a morning routine? I
do. And so here's the thing. For some of a doggone reason, like I mentioned, I have these vineyards in New Zealand, but I don't like wine. I don't drink wine.
I know.
I don't like alcohol. I wish I did because that would be socially more acceptable. So I just don't like alcohol. But I do like caffeine. I like my veins to be well caffeinated. So part of my morning routine is I like coffee, not just any coffee. I like it to be a good coffee. So I enjoy a latte with a good espresso machine and then a good brand of coffee. So I have one at the office and at home and all that sort of thing. And when I travel, one of the joys of being in Europe is I don't know why their coffee is so much better. The milk is different, the cows are different, the grass is different,
right?
Different rules regarding how you can treat them with antibiotics and all that sort of thing. So I enjoy a good coffee over there. So that's part of my morning routine.
Okay. Do you do like any type of meditations when you wake up to put your head on straight? Or you just naturally?
Yeah, I started meditating at 15. My mother dropped me off at a TM, Transcendental Meditation, and why she didn't fear that she'd lose me to the flower power movement, I don't know. But so yeah,
I was just telling the story when I this morning about about my when I first went and they told me to listen to Sadhguru to introduce me to meditation. This is like 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago. And all he kept saying was, I am not my body. I am not my mind. And I called the guy that was teaching me to meditate. And I'm like, well, if I'm not my body and not my mind, who the hell am I? So that's how far gone I was. But now I can meditate, Mr. De Roos. So that's a good thing, right?
That's
You think meditation helps you because you're always so chipper. You always have a smile on your face. I've never really seen you in a bad mood. We've talked on the phone when you came back from traveling for hours and hours and hours. Never caught you being cranky or grumpy. How do you keep that sunny disposition?
I don't know. I honestly don't have a formula for that. I can't understand why some people are almost in a permanent state of grumpiness. I wonder whether it's an attitude thing or whether it's genetic or biological. I don't know. But I know that the odd time that I am grumpy, I think, well, that's no fun. So why do it? We have a choice in these things. People think life happens at them. They think our eyeballs are lenses that absorb what's out there and project the image of the reality into our brain. Whereas I believe that what we create in our brains causes the image of what we want to have happen to be projected out through our eyes, and we're this massive projection system. Not quite literally. I know you'll be able to poke holes in that argument from a scientific point of view, but if you think about that, we create a lot more of what happens to us than we care to admit to.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Go on. I don't want to interrupt you. Go on.
No, so I lived in San Diego for a while, and I used to go to meditation sessions every Thursday night, and they were run by a then not very well-known guy by the name of Deepak Chopra. And so
my Lord.
I know I got to hang with him every Thursday. And, he introduced me to a lot of these concepts about how, we really determine what happens to us in our life by how we lead our lives and the thoughts we put out there. And it didn't start with him. As a man thinketh. I think, was it Jerome K. Jerome? It's politically incorrect now. It would be as a person thinketh, I guess. But, he basically said you become your dominant thoughts. Right. And all the sayings that birds of a feather flock together. It's just...
who you surround yourself with. They say the top 5 people. We talked about that. Who you surround yourself with, that's going to shape where you're going in life, your attitude, everything really.
So it's so important to choose your friends wisely.
It is.
And if you're not happy with where you're at in life, maybe look around you and see who you hang with. Because if you hang around with people that think it's okay to swear a lot and they get drunk a lot and they hit on people inappropriately a lot and they break the speed limit while they're on drugs, if that's your group of friends, then you'll gravitate because you'll think that's normal.
Right. And if you want something bigger, you need to be in bigger conversations. And you need to put yourself in places, when we talked about that earlier, and especially me, especially right now, what I'm doing. You want to be the stupidest person in the room. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to always be learning and evolving and changing and becoming better. And I've been learning a lot, and we've been hearing a lot, the new wave movement, like, the what they say, the level of consciousness is increasing now in the world. And here people are hearing things about manifestation and all that, right? So it's becoming more mainstream and people are hearing about that more. And it might sound like hocus pocus and all that, but manifesting basically is our thoughts, right? Putting our thoughts into action, having that feeling, visualizing ourselves, doing what we want to do. And I think it's really, really huge. Now you have to put action steps. You just can't just, close your eyes and picture yourself doing great things and not put action steps. But I think our words and what our thoughts and the people we hang out with is going to shape, what's moving forward for you in your life.
Yeah, it's true. You become your dominant thoughts. So what you focus on is important. That's why choose the TV. If you're going to watch TV, choose the programs you watch carefully. Choose which books you're going to read. Choose which magazines you filter through.
I get bored of TV unless it's teaching me something. I've always been different like that too. So I bought a subscription to Gaia, Gaia, and it's like Netflix for spiritual people. So I'm learning. So if I am going to watch something, because sometimes I want to turn off, but I'm still learning. And, I'm watching stuff that's feeding my brain, instead of just, like just zoning out. I don't want to be doing that. I want to keep myself positive and moving forward. And my last question, do you have any pets? We've asked everybody if they have pets.
As in animal pets?
Yes. Do you have any animal pets?
No, because I travel so much. I've got a bizarre travel schedule. I'm reluctant to reveal some of the stats because it sounds as though I'm trying to achieve some outcome, like show off or whatever. And it's not about that.
No, but I want people to do that. And literally, I don't even know everything that you're doing. But if you don't have any pets, and then I'm going to ask you one more question. Are you more of a cat guy or a dog guy?
Oh, I think if I were to choose, I'd probably have dogs. But here's an interesting thing.
Okay.
Dogs and cats, all animals actually, they gravitate towards them. They
Of
come to
course
me.
they
So
do.
I'll visit someone and I'll sit down and a cat will jump up on my lap and start purring, right? No big deal. But the owner will say, oh my God, this cat hides when there are visitors, especially men. We think she's been mistreated by men in the past. And yet they come to me and purr. It's kind of weird. So I think cats are very sensitive to energy. And that's a whole
Yes.
nother topic that's unrelated to real estate.
Yeah,
But
but
they
that's
pick
what.
up on that stuff. And so, yeah, it's just to have an open mind. And, I don't particularly dislike cats. I don't particularly like them. But they hang around me. They follow me around. But then I've worked with dolphins a lot as part of my PhD work. And,
Really?
oh, yeah, I've spent time in the water with dolphins and they're just so playful and I get on well with them. Same with horses. I just connect with horses and.
You kind of, yeah, you seem like a kind of dolphin energy, just really happy. I think that's definitely true. For sure. Dolf De Roos, I want you to tell everybody before we go about, because it was so awesome. You do so many things, and I've known you for just a short period of time, and you always surprise me. But in our conversations, you told me about this event you do. I think it's once a year, and it's called the Lake Como Experience. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so I run this event on the shores of Lake Como, which is beautiful. I mean, Bellagio is on the shores of Lake Como, and the Bellagio Hotel was named after that. I had people in Vegas once, when they heard I did these events, they said, oh, did they name that place after our hotel? And I said, you got to travel more. You just got to get out. Americans have the lowest uptake of passports in the Western world, and only 5% of those with a passport ever use it in a year. So just travel more and become a bit more worldly wise.
Right.
But unlike all my other events where there's an agenda, I do events, and on day one, we're going to talk about this, and day two, that, and before lunch on Wednesday, we're going to. This is an event where there's no agenda. I don't know what I'm going to talk about until people show up. And we limit it to between 6 and 12 people. So it's a very intimate group. Right. And it's very much a masterminding session. It's not just me teaching, but everyone interacting. But our commitment is that, everyone has something holding them back from going to the next level. Most of the people I come across, they say things like, I'm honest and kind and friendly. I think I am, but I feel I should be operating at a higher level. Why am I struggling to get ahead? And we'll figure out what they need to do to go to the next level. And it's pretty raw. It's pretty intense. There are often quite a few tears involved in that process. But we've never had a request for a refund. People come back again and again. It lasts a week. We go from Monday morning to Friday evening. And it's kind of this cool event. And it's in a great setting. Who wouldn't want to be on the shores of Lake Como in Italy? That's where Versace had his holiday home. George Clooney has his holiday home.
No, it's beautiful.
King Leopold of Belgium. All of them converge there. It's the jewel of the Northern Hemisphere. And sometimes I run them in Queenstown, New Zealand, which by many measures is the jewel of the Southern Hemisphere. So we've got kind of the two top places in the world where we put on these extraordinary events where people go through a process of self-discovery to find out what's holding them back without them even realizing it. What's holding them back from going to the next level?
Right. That's awesome. So check that out, everyone. We'll put a link in the bio, but look at the Lake Como Experience, I believe it is, right? .com.
Yeah, it's the LakeComoExperience.com. Como, C-O-M-O. So the LakeComoExperience.com.
Yeah, we'll put that up. That's awesome. Is that your favorite event? Can you tell us about any of the other events you do or masterminds or anything? That you're a busy guy. I mean, you're a mentor to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm blessed. I've been blessed to work with presidents, including presidents of this country, the US, but also other countries. I've turned presidents down as clients. That's kind of an interesting dynamic. Yeah. That's a whole nother story. So I'm just blessed in that way. But it all comes down to, the same reason why cats come to me. You've got to do something that makes people think, wow, that's different. That's interesting. And not different in the sense dress up weirdly to be different. I mean, you've got to, any interaction, anything in life, you've got to have something to offer. You're, all of us, the listeners, you're attracted to something that you think, wow, that's interesting. I can learn from that. We're drawn to that. So you like watching that Gaia thing because it teaches you stuff you didn't know. So I think we all have this hankering to gain something. And, it's that old saying, Zig Ziglar came up with it. And I've been blessed. I've worked with, if you know Jim Rohn, I think one of the top guys in the whole industry, one of the original founders of this whole industry. I used to tour Asia with him and, Brian Tracy and all the big names. But Zig Ziglar said it, and he got it right. He said, you can get whatever you want in this world, as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And maybe a question for everyone to ask themselves is, what are you offering the world? And forget what you can get, what can you buy when there's a Black Friday sale on, and what can you get when you go to an event, and what can you get when you meet this person? I'll see if I can get through to him and make it. And no, it's not what can you give? What have you got to give?
Right. And I
Because
say lead with a servant's heart. I mean, if you approach everything with, with that sense of servanthood and how you can give and how you can serve, I think that that's a great way to approach things.
because you can't give kindness away. The more you give, the more you get.
That's absolutely right. When I say we're all one, and it's a whole nother concept that we're talking about, but yeah, the world right now, anxieties are high. Thank you very much for your time. I believe knowledge is power. That's what I'm trying to do. Is help
Applied
people.
knowledge. Applied knowledge.
Applied knowledge, right? Applied knowledge. Absolutely. Dolf De Roos, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the hour that you graced us with your time. I truly appreciate it. Yes. And everyone check out Dolf De Roos. That's DOLF and DEROOS. Dolf De Roos. Check him out. He's subscribed to his channel. He's on YouTube. You can check him out on all his social media channels. He gives great content. Check out the LakeComoExperience.com. And again, Dolf, thank you so much for your time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.